Hi guys, it's Kelly and I'm back with another video. Today's video we are going to be using some products from Honeybee Stamps. I'm using the Spring Greenery, the Fall Bouquet, the Fall Leaves, and the Burlap 3D stencils. I showed the Heartfelt Hello, but I didn't end up using it. I used the Autumn Bouquet, the Bountiful Sentiments. No, that's not right. I'll link it all below. You know how it rolls. So we're doing a double embossing technique today, which is super fun, and we're going to get right into it. First thing that we're going to do, because it's our background. So I just have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock. I have just lightly spritzed the back of it with some water, and I'm going to use the Burlap 3D embossing folder first. Here is what I found in kind of messing around with this technique. The combination of the embossing folders really does matter. So you want one that's kind of a muted all over pattern, which is what we have with the Burlap. And then you want one that's a little bit larger and less intricate detail, which is the Falling Leaves embossing folder. And so I'm just kind of feeling it to make sure that I'm putting it in the way that I want, which is going to have the leaves press up. And this is the same piece. We're double embossing it, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. I'll show you the difference between the two after we get there. So I'm just going to run this through. My paper still had enough moisture from the first spritz that I didn't feel the need to add it again. So when you look at this as a white background, it's very challenging to see the difference between what the Falling Leaves would look like normally and what it looks like double embossed. So in order to really punch up that detail, I'm going to use my brayer and our gold metallic pigment ink, and I'm just going to brayer directly over the top of this. This ink is going to hit on all of the raised areas, so you can see those beautiful leaves. And again, it's hard to see the Burlap when you don't have anything to compare it to. I will show you them side by side, the Falling Leaves by itself and the Falling Leaves double embossed with the Burlap, so that you can see the difference. But there's so much more texture. It's so much more interesting to look at. And so here they are side by side. The one on the right will be the double embossed, where you can see that Burlap, and the one on the left is just the regular Falling Leaves. This is just it's super easy, super simple, another technique to kind of show you how to get a different look out of products, to use them maybe not in the original way that they were intended for. The other one that I did was our wood grain and the pine. So the pine with the wood grain is on the left. The pine just by itself is on the right. This one is definitely more subtle, but again, I found that it worked better with one that was just a very simple all over pattern. So yeah, now we're going to get into the inking, but we're basically just ink blending large portions of cardstock for die cutting. But before we do that, we got right into the technique right away, so I didn't even have the chance to say Happy World Card Making Day. Just tons of fun stuff going on this weekend. I myself taught at an Altenew retreat this afternoon, and then I will also be teaching live for the Hero Art Stamp Along tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. If you are a person who just enjoys watching lives, or if you got the September My Monthly Hero kit, please come over and hang out with us. We will be making a super fun watercolor card. So there's also sales, tons of sales going on for World Card Making, which I super love. And Honeybee is actually offering 20% off your entire purchase, including any clearance or retiring items. So that is today, the October 7th, and then tomorrow, October 8th, that coupon will be good for. And there's other ones that are really good, like a Cherry on Top, which is just like a general craft store. They are also offering like a 15% off coupon. I will have them all linked below over on my craft page, so I will link to that as well. because Lord knows, don't we all need the coupons? We do. So let's get back to the card. So what I'm doing here is I just have, this is a half sheet of paper. It's 5.5 by 8.25. And I went through and looked at my dies, and I knew I wanted to make a wreath because I thought that that would be a really fun way to kind of showcase that double embossing background. But I just went through and looked at the colors that I was going to need for my die cutting, how many of each I was going to need. And then I started doing my ink blending based on that. So I obviously have a larger green area because I have a lot of leaves. This is for the wheat dye from the autumn bouquets. So I did some mustard seed, fossilized amber, and some browns. Again, just trying to make them more interesting. You absolutely could cut them out of colored cardstock if you own colored cardstock, and then maybe, add some interest to them with inking them up afterward. But I knew I was going to be doing tons of die cutting, and so I just did these large sheets. I am eventually going to speed this up because ink blending is ink blending, y'all. So yeah, once this one was done, then I'm going to move on to the next one, which is going to include more oranges and reds as well as yellows and greens, because I did want to include some like flat little flowers. It's actually from the spring greenery set, and it's supposed to be Queen Anne's lace. But I knew that I could cut them apart and, put little sprigs of it into my wreath. And so I decided I was going to make them their own separate little florals. So we are going to have a little bit of time for some story time. So I told you this weekend that I had been busy teaching for other companies, which I'm always so grateful for the opportunity. There's so many talented card makers they could approach about teaching, and I'm always super grateful when they choose to ask me to do that. So with that in mind, with classes in mind, I actually want to ask a favor from you guys as well. And if you've been with my channel a long time, you know that I've always talked about wanting to teach classes, and that nothing's changed on that front. However, I would really love your feedback. I want to create classes that everybody can come to and feel really successful. And I know everybody is not possible, but the most students can be successful. And so below, if you're watching on YouTube, I've actually linked a survey, and I would really appreciate, it's just 5 questions. I would really appreciate it if you guys took the time to answer that survey. It's just going to give me a better idea of what it is you guys are looking for. I already have like a class outline and some handouts and things like that for the first class that I want to do. But I just want to make sure, like after looking at it and talking to a trusted friend about it, I'm not sure entirely if my way of going about it is the best way. And so I just need some input. Let's talk about what we're doing here. So I'm going to go in, because these are distress inks, they're reactive with water. In order to make the die cuts just slightly more interesting, I am going to just spatter on some water. And then once I'm happy with you don't want to go too crazy. I'm just using a small number 2 round brush because this is not watercolor paper. So we don't want to saturate it. We just want some nice little spatters to break up the color. And then once I'm happy with the clear water spatters, I'm going to go in and use some gold perfect pearls to create some gold spatters. That way it's just kind of haphazard. And when we do our die cutting, our elements out of it, we'll get a little bit of spatter, like clean spatters, and then we'll get some gold spatters, and it will just make it overall more interesting. Once that's dry, I'm going to go in, I'm going to line up all of my die cuts. I call it playing die cut Tetris, trying to fit them all in. And so I'm just going to go in and line these up. For the fall bouquet, they have 4 leaves that I really love. And those I'm going to just fit in any open areas that I can in between the bigger dies. And then once I get everything die cut, I'm just going to sort them out on my desk. You'll see that here in a minute. And then here what I have is you can create this little like hoop frame with just 2 different size circle dies. I actually used, because I just happened to have it sitting on my desk, I used the wagon wheel die, the Lovely Layers wagon wheel die from Honeybee to cut out this is like the wheel portion, and that worked. I covered that in some like rip tape adhesive, and now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to start building my wreath. There isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. You just really want to have a balanced design. And so here what I'm showing you is when I first originally went in, I started laying them down, and they were just like, I was just laying them down across, and it was giving me a very square feel. Obviously, when you're making a wreath, you don't want it to look like a square. You want it to look like a circle. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to kind of bend and manipulate the die cuts so that they do go around the circle. And you'll see that's what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of turning the leaves and tucking them as I need to get a more round wreath versus a square wreath. The other thing that I'm going to do as I go through and put this together is any parts that I really don't need and are just adding bulk to my wreath, I'm just going to rip them off. Nobody's going to see it because it's all going to be behind, but don't feel like you have to keep the whole piece. You definitely do not. And so this little tape, this is not going to be the only adhesive that we use at the end of the day. We're going to go back in and re-secure it with some liquid adhesive. But the little tape does do quite a bit to help us just kind of hold these in place while we're building our wreath, but still allowing us to pick the die cuts back up if we need to reevaluate. And I'm going to be honest with you, I needed to reevaluate quite a bit. When you're building something like a wreath from scratch, it can be a little bit of work to get a good balance and get something that you're going to be happy with. So see, like I had put these down here, and then I realized they had these larger leaves and they should have really been on the bottom, but they weren't. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to, just lift up the other ones and tuck these. They almost look like little fern pieces. Tuck these little fern pieces in behind, because I felt like they would look better in the background. So don't be hard on yourself. Just know that when you're building your own wreath, you're going to have to, just sit around and have a little bit of playtime until you find something that's going to look the way that you want it to look. And that's okay. That's supposed to be part of the, the fun is the coming up with your own things, if you will. So anyway, back to this, these classes. So it's something that I've been working on for quite some time. I just as we're getting closer and closer to a actual okay, now Kelly, you have to sit down and do it type situation. I would just really appreciate your guys' feedback, because ultimately at the end of the day, the class is to teach, to benefit you guys. And so if I don't know what it is you want to learn or how you learn, or what's a reasonable amount of time for you to manage, or what's in your budget for you to manage, then I can't put something out there that will help us to make sure that you're, still learning and successful. So I would, of course, I would always appreciate your feedback, and you'll see, as we go along with videos, I'll probably make mention of the survey just here and there, because I'm going to leave it open for a little bit just so I can get as much feedback as possible. Because I know it's World Card Making Day and there's a lot happening today, and maybe you won't see it. The survey will be open for at least a week. So if you can get over there at some point and just answer those 5 questions for me, that would be amazing, and I would be super grateful. Other than that, we've had a little bit of a busy weekend because I do have 2 things scheduled for teaching, and then we also have some social things. So we have a party for one of the promotions for, like, obviously if you follow my channel, you know that my husband and I used to work together, and now he still works there and I don't. But that doesn't mean that I don't still know all the same people. And honestly, I knew them probably a lot longer than he did. But so there has been a promotion, and so we have a promotion party to go to. And so normally my go-to would be like to ask my mom or Eric's mom, but Sunday is my in-laws' wedding anniversary, so they have plans, and then my dad's cousin is turning 90, I think, so my parents also have plans. So fortunately for me, I have wonderful sisters. One of my sisters is going to come over, and we're going to do like a flyby. Did you ever do that when you had small kids? Like, it's an adult party. I can't take my kids to an adult party and then expect them to behave. That's completely unfair to my children. So if I'm going to an adult party, it's easier on the kids and on my husband and I if we just get a sitter. So now that we have everything pretty much built out, I'm just taking those 4 little leaves, remember, that we talked about, that are cut in lots of different colors, and I am just tucking them in anywhere that I think I need a little bit more color or I need a little bit more fullness. I'm just tucking them in periodically with my glue press, which is also how I secure it to the actual base of the card. So yeah, so we're gonna do that, but we're only gonna just pop in for just like an hour or so. So drive time and like about an hour at the party, just so that way we're not just gonna be hanging out for forever. We're just gonna do a little flyby party pit stop kind of situation for the weekend. But then my husband is on call this week, and so he did have to go into work today, so I'm flying solo, which is fine. It's just, that happens. But that was just a little bit unexpected. So it's just a little crazy. Like, I always feel like our schedule is just a little bit up in the air, just because that's the kind of lives we lead. But that's all right. We're making do with it. So now we're going to go ahead and adhere our wreath to our embossed background, and I was super happy with the way that this came out. I thought it was really pretty, full, kind of fall wreath. There is a lot of layered die cuts on here, so I am having to, add my glue and then hold it down for a second. I don't have a like super pretty paperweight, but if I did, I would have utilized it. So if you have one, now's the time to break it out. Now's the time to get it done. In the layering dies, the name escapes me at the moment, there is this little banner, which I thought was super pretty and would play really nicely with the wreath. This is the only Copic coloring we're doing. I know, guys, aren't you amazed? I made a whole card today, earlier today, that had no Copic coloring in it or alcohol markers whatsoever. Shocking. I didn't even know I was capable. But basically, we're just going to go and we're going to add some shading to this banner. I chose some warm grays because the gold in the background that we did the inking with is a bit on the warmer side. It's a less brassy gold, and so these matched really nicely together. Just going to add some shadows to the little legs behind, like the little tails behind, and then, kind of toward the center. The bountiful banners. Oh, I finally came to me 20 minutes into the video. Bountiful banners. I just used the sentiment. That's all I used from the set. And this one says happy birthday, because you guys know I'm always in desperate need of birthday cards. And then I'm going to stamp that in that same gold ink. Treat it with my anti-static tool, stamp it down, and then I am going to use gold embossing powder to go ahead and heat set this with, so that way it's nice and shiny and you can see it. I struggle with heat embossing gold on white because sometimes it can make it very challenging to read, and that is exactly what happened here, but I'll show you how I kind of work around that. So once this was heat set and smooth, then we can go back and start building our card. So because we have so many layers, like just layers and layers for days of die cuts, I really need to use foam adhesive for the center of this banner. So here what I'm doing is I'm just moving around these little pop dots to make sure that I'm getting them where they need to be so that the tails are sitting on top of the dies and the foam tape isn't impeding it being flush with the card. So once I have those in place, I'm going to add a third one. And then originally I added a little bit of glue to either side. But that only worked for one side. Only one side was tall enough for it to be flush and even. Just because, you know, the die cuts are just kind of layered up. I don't want to say haphazardly because obviously I tried to make it balanced, but they're not the same on each side. They're not perfectly symmetrical. So I am going to go back in. Honeybee has these really great foam strips, and these are just they're very thin, which is great when you just need a little bit of oomph. So I'm actually going to tuck just two of these right on top of each other, so that way they will give enough lift for it to be flush, but not too much lift for them sitting on top of the actual die cuts. So after this, why do I do this to myself? I don't know. I decided that the card would look better with a little bit of a matte. So, and it was a little bit uncentered. Like it was a little bit uneven. So what I did was I just went in and cut off like 1/8 of an inch on each side. So I just folded my die cuts up. And then anytime you're cutting anything that you've already embossed, just to make sure your paper doesn't tear, you want to start cutting in the center and then go up and back down. So that way you're not running into the issue of it pushing up against the embossing. I'm going to mount this on a craft cardstock. This one I think is actually sand from Hero Arts. But again, it matches that kind of nice gold, just that much more subdued look. So I'm going to mount that on there. So now it just has it's got 1/8 of an inch matte on each side. And now we're going to add some gemstones. I pulled out, you guys know, I think Honeybee has the best gems. That's no secret. Like gem stickers, Honeybee's got the market. But I am going to, I went with the Simply Spring. They had these really pretty yellow-green, like peridot color, and also some orange, and that's what I chose to use. And I'm going to use them to not only accent my sentiment banner, which is what I would normally do, but I'm also going to use them to add a little bit of shine to my actual wreath. So, but those are the only two colors I used. Could you use more colors? Absolutely. Like you could make a rainbow of rhinestones, but I just used the orange and the green, and I was happy with the results that I got from that. I did try not to overdo it. I know that I like shine and rhinestones and things like that, and not everybody does, so I tried to be conscientious of that. Here's how I'm going to make the sentiment pop a bit more. You can read it when it's not shiny, but when it is shiny, it is hard to read. So I'm going in with a W3, and I'm just adding a little bit of shadow next to each of the letters. This is going to help the happy birthday to be seen in the light and in the shadow. And then I'm just going to blend this out with a bit of a C1. So it is making the banner a little bit darker. I don't think it makes it too dark that it doesn't still go, but it makes the sentiment so much more legible. I'm going to add a little bit of clear to the flowers and then some white dots in the embossed portions just to give it a little bit more character. And then that's pretty much going to be it. So you guys know I always appreciate your time, especially on a day like today where there's so much content being offered. Thank you for stopping by my channel. I appreciate you. And then, oh, I added wax. Y'all, stop it. I added wax. I forgot about this because I just said I could go overboard with the shine. Anyway, I added a little bit of hero wax. Originally, I was just going to add it to the harvest wheat, but I ended up adding just kind of bits and bobs here and there all over the leaves, just with my finger, and I love the texture and the shine that it added. Anyway, back to the road of my spiel. If you could fill out that survey for me, that would be amazing. Also, don't forget that coupon code that runs this weekend, and to head over, to the craft page for any other sales. Thank you guys so much for your time. I always appreciate them, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.